everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to show you how to paint a tree, so let's do it. Okay, so to start, I'm just going to go through my materials. Today I'm going to be using Canson watercolor paper from my watercolor notebook. I'm going to be using my Winsor Newton Cotman watercolors. I have my Princeton snap brush in a size 10, my water, my paper towel, and we're ready to go. Okay, so the reason why I'm using my Canson paper today is because I find with my Arches paper, the colors blend too well. And for this tree that I'm going to be painting, I want a little bit of separation and a bit more texture. So if you have Canson paper or lower quality paper, you are in for a treat today because that's what we're going to be using. Okay, so the first thing we are going to be doing is we're going to be doing the highlight of the tree. So you got to kind of decide where your light source is going to come from. So is it going to come right from the top down? Is it going to come from one side or the other? Because that is going to determine where the lightest part of your tree is. So I'm going to be using lemon yellow for this. I'm just going to mix it a bit with a sap green, but I really want a light, bright yellow for that highlight. I'm going to have my sun come from this way. So the lightest part of my tree is going to be the top and this side, okay? So that's where you're gonna put your first bit, and you're just gonna tap around. And really there's no wrong way to do this because it's a tree and trees aren't all the same. And you are gonna wanna leave some white space in your tree for branches, okay? You don't want this big blob of color. You want to show some separation so we can throw some branches going through it too. Okay, maybe even up here too, it's not all connected. Okay, so you have your bright lemon yellow color there with a bit of green. Then I'm going to use some sap green for like a mid-tone. Just using this tapping technique, just tap around. I am going to put a bit more of that lemon yellow maybe right here because maybe there's a part that's sticking out, that's also catching that sunlight. And I'll just go underneath it with some of that mid-tone color. And as we start to make our way down, we will pick up some darker green. So I have Hooker's Green Dark here that I can start throwing in. And because this side of the tree is the furthest away from the sun, it is going to be the darkest. So this underside over here. So this isn't even my dark color that I'm using yet. This is just a darker green, but I am going to go back in with an even darker shade after. Okay, and you can throw some of that darker color underneath some of those white spaces you're leaving. Okay, just a bit of shadow. That mid-tone color again. And now I'm going to get my darker green. So I'm going to be mixing Hooker's Green Dark with Dioxazine Purple to get a nice deep shadow color. And I'm just going to throw it down here. Again, under some of those white spaces. See these little white areas? I'm just putting it under there. Okay. Like so. And this is just kind of your first layer. All of it is still pretty wet. We're going to go back in and kind of do the same thing just to create a bit more texture after. So now while that is starting to dry, I'm going to do the trunk of the tree. I'm going to take my burnt umber and I'm going to draw a trunk, but then I'm going to draw it branching off Okay, you don't want just one trunk. You want little branches kind of coming off to make it look a bit more realistic. Okay, now be careful that you try not to use too much water because it will run right all into the tree. As you can see, the green that isn't dry yet is starting to go into the trunk, which is okay, as long as it's not taking it over. And if it is, just mop it up with your paper towel and go over it again. Okay, so I'm just drawing some of the roots down here, like that. Drawing a little bit of branches. And while it's drying too, you can, you know, draw some branches through those little white bits. We will go back over them again later. Okay, now I'm going to go in and I'm going to add a bit of black to this brown. I want a really dark brown, and I'm going to drop it on the side of where the shadow is. I'm actually going to use my smaller brush because that shadow will be making that one side of that tree darker and the branches too, especially right underneath, right? Just creating some more branches. Okay, now we're gonna wait for this to dry before we do our second layer. Okay, so now that it's dry, we are gonna go back in with some more details. So starting just like we did before, take your lemon yellow, your highlight, and you can just do the same kind of thing. And because that first layer is dry, you're gonna see the definition in these little strokes that you're doing, okay? Just getting that highlight. I'm gonna go back in with my sap green, my mid-tone. Get that darker green in there. Remember, underneath those white areas. Then get that really dark bit for the shadow below. Okay. And what I like about this paper is that as you add some wet on that dry, it kind of adds a texture to it. You know, it kind of spreads the paint. Like it doesn't, because it doesn't soak into the paper like Arches does. It kind of sits on top, but it creates a bit of a cool texture to it, which I think is perfect for trees, which need a lot of texture. Honestly, I tried doing it with Arches. If I have it still. And if you notice, it just kind of all blended together a bit too well. I think if I went over it now, I could create some different texture, but it just all blended together. Nice seamless blend, which is great for my florals, but I wasn't as fond of it for this. So that is why I am using Canson. And I want to get really dark under those where the trunk is, kind of. Like that. Okay. Okay. There you go. There is your tree. If you feel like adding some grass, you can do that too. You know, just you got to be careful with Canson though, because if you go back over it when it's wet, or sorry, when it's dry, it will lift up some of that paint. The paint does not soak in like it does with higher quality paper. So like if I were to go over this whole area, it would take up some of that brown and mix it a bit, which is not ideal. So just pop in some of that color around it. Again, you can add some of that lemon yellow highlight over here where the sun would be hitting. And then a bit more of that darker, oops, that darker green right under the tree where it would be casting the shadow. And there you go. There is your simple watercolor tree. Thank you guys so much for watching my video. I really hope you liked it and I hope you learned something. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and follow me on Instagram for more. Have a great day, guys. Bye.